The Santiago Sky Heist. Inside Chile's $10 million airport robbery prologue, the perfect target, Santiago.
Chile.
December 2022, the sprawling expanse of Arturo Merino International Airport hummed with the familiar rhythms of international travel. Tourists dragged suitcases across polished floors, while business travelers clutched briefcases, all oblivious to the invisible currents of cash flowing through the airport's arteries. For most, the airport was a gateway to adventure or commerce. For Rodrigo Alvarez, it represented something else entirely. Alvarez, a former security contractor who had worked briefly at the airport 5 years earlier, sat at a cafe in Terminal R, nursing a cooling coffee as he observed the predictable patterns of the armored vehicles that arrived like clockwork each month. These trucks carried millions in foreign currency bound for exchange houses and banks throughout Chile, necessary service for Latin America's financial hub. Same route, same timing, same blind spots, Alvarez murmured to himself, jotting notes in a small black notebook. At 45, with graying temples and calloused hands, he had the weathered look of a man who had waited too long for his fortune. This would be his masterpiece, a score so significant it would fund a new life far from Chile's shores. What Alvarez observed that December morning was the culmination of 6 months of meticulous surveillance, a vulnerability in Chile's most secure transport system. The Brink's armored trucks would arrive at the airport's cargo area at predictable intervals. Following procedures that prioritized efficiency over varying security protocols, the cargo area's sprawling section of tarmac and warehouses was a maze of blind spots and jurisdictional confusion between airport security, national police, and private security firms. It was here, in this liminal space of divided responsibility, that Alvarez saw his opening. The assembly and planning 6 months before the heist. Rodrigo Alvarez sat alone in his modest apartment in Recoleta, surrounded by maps, technical manuals, and security protocols he'd acquired through various sources. The walls were covered with photographs of the airport taken from different angles, timelines of security rotations, and detailed notes on armored vehicle schedules. This obsessive planning had begun nearly a year earlier, when a former colleague mentioned the airport's new currency handling protocols in passing. 3 separate jurisdictions, 3 separate security systems, not one talking to the other. Alvarez muttered as he traced his finger along the route between the airport's perimeter road and the cargo bay. He had identified the perfect weakness, a 200-meter stretch, where responsibility transferred from municipal police to private security and then to airport authority, creating 2 separate handoff points where oversight momentarily lapsed. 3 months before the heist, the safe house in La Pintana, a working-class district on Santiago's southern periphery, was unremarkable by design, a single-story concrete structure with peeling paint and security bars on the windows, indistinguishable from its neighbors. Inside, however, it had been transformed into the nerve center for what would become Chile's most audacious robbery. Alvarez had painstakingly assembled a crew of 8 specialists over the previous months, approaching each individually and revealing only as much information as necessary until he was certain of their commitment. Each was selected not only for specific skills, but also for circumstances that made them desperate for a life-changing score. Miguel Fuentes, former military driver dishonorably discharged after a disputed incident in peacekeeping operations. Experience with heavy vehicles under pressure and tactical driving techniques. Currently working as a taxi driver, drowning in debt from his daughter's medical treatments. The Cordero brothers, Daniel and Eduardo, ex-convicts with expertise in security systems, who had served time for commercial burglaries. Their previous crimes showed meticulous planning, but were undone by an informant, now struggling to find legitimate work with their criminal records. Valentina Rojas, a brilliant computer specialist who had worked as an IT contractor for the airport authority until budget cuts eliminated her position 6 months earlier, bitter about her termination and facing foreclosure on her family home. Jorge Mendez, a police academy dropout with knowledge of tactical operations and law enforcement protocols. Dismissed for psychological unsuitability, but retained connections with former classmates now working in various security roles. Carlos Reyes, an inside man currently employed as a baggage handler with access to restricted areas, facing significant gambling debts to dangerous creditors and increasingly desperate for a way out. Filippo Ortiz, a former military armorer turned weapons specialist with connections to Chile's black market. His legitimate security business had failed during the pandemic, leaving him with specialized knowledge but few legal outlets. Sofia Vargas, a former bank employee who had worked in cash logistics until being fired for a procedural violation she maintained was not her fault. Her intimate knowledge of cash transport protocols and security procedures made her invaluable. Alvarez had used different recruitment approaches for each team member. For the desperate ones like Reyes and Fuentes, he offered financial salvation. For the bitter ones like Rojas and Vargas, he offered vindication. For the Cordero brothers and Ortiz, he appealed to their professional pride in executing the perfect crime. $10 million, Alvarez announced to the assembled group, spreading airport schematics across a folding table in the safehouses main room. Minimum. That's what moves through on the monthly currency shipments. The room fell silent as the magnitude of the target registered. Split 8 ways. That's more than enough to disappear forever, Alvarez continued. But this isn't a smash and grab. We're going to execute this with military precision. The planning phase was methodical, with each team member contributing specialized knowledge. Carlos provided critical insider information. The exact cargo bay where valuable currency shipments were unloaded, the blind spots in the security camera coverage, and most importantly, the precise timing of shift changes among security personnel. The sweet spot is Mondays between 8:15 and 8:30, Carlos explained during one planning session. That's when the weekend crew hands off to the weekday team. There's always confusion, always gaps. Valentina focused on penetrating the airport's digital infrastructure. She spent weeks identifying backdoors in the security system, eventually discovering an unpatched vulnerability in the CCTV network. The system uses an outdated version of Adminzi's software, she explained to Alvarez. There's a documented vulnerability they never fixed, because it's on an internal network they assumed was secure. Working from equipment purchased through anonymous channels, she developed custom malware that could freeze and loop camera feeds without triggering alerts. The Cordero brothers conducted detailed surveillance of the armored vehicles themselves, photographing them from multiple angles and researching their specifications. They determined that the Brink's vehicles used a 2-factor security system for the rear. Compartment a digital code plus a physical key. The code changes daily, Daniel Cordero explained, but there's a pattern. And more importantly, the guards are trained to comply with law enforcement in emergencies. If we appear to be authorized security personnel, they'll provide the codes under pressure. Sofia contributed critical knowledge about cash handling protocols. The shipments are timed to banking hours, she revealed. The April 10th shipment will be particularly large because it follows the Easter banking holiday weekend. They'll be moving at least 3 times the normal amount. Felipe Ortiz handled the tactical equipment. Through black market connections, he acquired replica tactical gear identical to that used by Chilean security forces, including vests, communication equipment, and non-functional replica weapons that would appear authentic under pressure. The psychological effect is what matters, he explained as the team examined the gear. If they believe we're official, they'll comply without resistance. Jorge Mendez developed the tactical approach, drawing on his police academy training. We need to control the situation within the first 30 seconds, he instructed during rehearsals. Clear commands, authoritative presence, no hesitation. The more they believe we're conducting an official operation, the less likely anyone is to resist. Over the following weeks, the crew established their roles and responsibilities with military precision. Alvarez implemented strict operational security measures. No digital communications about the heist. No personal connections between team members that could be traced. All planning documents to be destroyed after memorization. No spending of any proceeds for at least 6 months after the operation. Predetermined escape routes with multiple contingencies. Individual exit strategies for leaving Chile separately. Valentina finalized her program that would loop CCTV footage during the critical 8-minute window they had identified, testing it repeatedly on similar systems to ensure reliability. The Cordero brothers studied the armored vehicle's vulnerabilities through contacts in the security industry, identifying the precise moment when the guards would be most exposed during the transfer. Carlos provided weekly updates on security rotations and patrol patterns. Alvarez insisted on rigorous rehearsals. He purchased an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Santiago, where they practiced the timing of each movement, using chalk outlines to represent the airport's layout. The team ran drills wearing identical black tactical gear and communication systems, simulating every possible scenario including guard resistance, technical failures, and security response. 7 minutes and 43 seconds, Alvarez announced after their final rehearsal, 3 days before the heist. That's our new record. On the day, we aim for under 7. Each team member memorized their role in the operation. Valentina would handle technical disruption from a remote location. Carlos would provide real-time updates from inside the airport. Miguel would drive the primary vehicle. The Cordero brothers would secure the guards and access the cash. Jorge and Felipe would provide tactical presence and security. Sofia would handle the cash transfer and security measures. Alvarez would coordinate the entire operation. The plan relied on precise timing and the exploitation of a jurisdictional blind spot. The exact moment when the armored truck would pass from the public road into the airport's cargo area, 200-meter stretch, or responsibility transferred from municipal police to airport security, creating a brief window of reduced oversight. This vulnerability had been identified through Alvarez's meticulous observation and Carlos's inside knowledge. In the final days before the operation, Alvarez established dead drops throughout Santiago, where team members could leave messages if digital communication became compromised. Each member received a go bag containing emergency cash, false identification documents, and contact information for black market operators who could assist with border crossings if conventional routes became impossible. The execution, April 10, 2023, 2:07 a.m. Dawn broke over Santiago with a low-hanging mist that shrouded the Andes Mountains. It was a Monday, deliberately chosen for the heist, because staff rotations meant newer, less experienced security personnel would be on duty. The team had been in position since 5:30 a.m., communicating via encrypted radio channels on frequencies carefully selected to avoid detection. Alvarez had established a command post in a nondescript panel van parked at a commercial lot with a clear view of the airport's southern perimeter. Status report, Alvarez commanded into his radio. Valentina online. Systems access established. Airport central security showing normal operations. Her voice was calm and methodical from her position 3 kilometers away in a rented apartment with high-speed internet connections running through multiple proxies. Carlos checking in from inside. Morning shift change proceeding normally. Target vehicle confirmed on schedule. Carlos was already at his legitimate job, using his employee access to monitor security movements. One by one, the team confirmed their readiness. The Cordero brothers were positioned near the cargo entrance in a maintenance vehicle. Sofia and Felipe were stationed in one of the SUVs in a short-term parking lot, waiting for the signal to move. Miguel and Jorge had the second SUV positioned near the employee entrance, ready to approach from a different angle to create confusion during the operation. At 7:12 a.m., Carlos sent the first critical alert. Cash flight landed early. Processing accelerated. Adjust timeline by 12 minutes. This was the first test of the team's preparation. Without hesitation, Alvarez recalculated the entire operation sequence. Timeline adjustment confirmed. All units calibrate to T-minus 45 minutes from mark. Alvarez checked his watch. Mark, the Brink's armored van departed from its secure facility at 7:30 a.m., carrying a shipment of approximately $32 million in various currencies, primarily US dollars and euros. This particular shipment was larger than usual due to banking holiday backlogs. The van, a reinforced Mercedes-Benz Sprinter with ballistic protection, carried 3 guards, a driver, and 2 security specialists. Valentina had placed a small GPS tracker on the vehicle during a previous shipment, courtesy of information provided by Carlos. She now monitored its progress through Santiago's morning traffic, providing real-time updates to the team. Target passing Avenida Providencia checkpoint, she announced. Estimated arrival time adjusted to 8:12 a.m. Alvarez made the final decision. Execute primary plan with accelerated timeline. Valentina, prepare system override. Miguel and Jorge, proceed to entry position. At precisely 8:07 a.m., Miguel Fuentes and Jorge Mendez position their stolen airport utility vehicle complete with authentic-looking decals at the checkpoint. The vehicle itself had been acquired 3 weeks earlier from a scrapyard and painstakingly refurbished to match airport maintenance vehicles, down to the correct paint shade and identification numbers from Carlos's photographs. Wearing airport maintenance uniforms created by Sofia based on detailed specifications, Miguel and Jorge presented forged credentials to the gate security. The credentials contained RFID chips encoded to mimic authentic airport IDs, though they wouldn't withstand close electronic verification. Emergency repair to the cargo bay doors, Miguel explained to the guard, pointing to fabricated work orders on an official-looking clipboard. "They're jammed again," supervisor said to prioritize. "They've got the currency shipment coming." The guard, a new hire who had been on the job for just 2 weeks, examined the credentials. The mention of the currency shipment knowledge that should be restricted paradoxically increased his trust. As it implied the workers were cleared for sensitive information, he radioed for confirmation but received a garbled response, the result of Valentina's interference with the radio frequencies. Using a specialized signal jammer tuned to the specific security band used by airport personnel. After a moment's hesitation, he waved them through, making a note in his log as required by protocol. At 8:15 a.m., Valentina activated her most sophisticated program. From her position, she executed a series of commands that infiltrated the airport's security network through the vulnerability she had identified. The program inserted a pre-recorded loop in the CCTV system, placing live footage with meticulously edited empty corridors and loading bays captured during previous surveillance. The 8-minute countdown began, CCTV compromised. 8-minute window active, she confirmed over the secure channel. Simultaneously, she initiated a secondary program that generated phantom alerts in other areas of the airport. Minor alarms about door sensors and motion detectors in distant terminals designed to divide security, attention, and resources. The armored van arrived at the cargo transfer point at 8:17 a.m., precisely on schedule. As the guards prepared to unload the shipment, the Cordero brothers gave the signal. 3 black SUVs screeched into the loading bay from different directions, executing a choreographed maneuver that effectively boxed in the armored vehicle, blocking all possible exit routes. The SUVs were stolen vehicles with cloned plates that had been selected for their common appearance, indistinguishable from thousands of similar vehicles in Santiago. Each had been carefully prepared with tinted windows and modified interiors to accommodate the stolen cash. Simultaneously, the maintenance vehicle driven by Miguel pulled up alongside, positioning itself to block the security camera mounted on the eastern wall, a redundant precaution given Valentina's hack. But Alvarez had insisted on multiple layers of security. 8 figures in black tactical gear emerged with synchronized precision from the vehicles. Their faces were obscured by balaclavas, and they wore replica Chilean police-style tactical vests, complete with official-looking insignia. For carried what appeared to be standard-issue FAME SAF submachine guns, the same model used by Chilean security forces. The weapons were sophisticated replicas, modified to appear authentic without being functional. As Alvarez had been adamant that no real firearms would be used. "National Police security breach," shouted Alvarez through a voice modulator that gave his commands an authoritative mechanical quality impossible to later identify. Hands in the air. "This is a security operation." The confusion was instantaneous and devastating. The guards, trained to comply with police orders, hesitated just long enough for Eduardo and Daniel to immobilize them with tactical zip ties specially purchased for the operation. Within 90 seconds, all 3 guards were secured. "Access code for the rear compartment," Alvarez demanded from the senior guard, pressing an official-looking badge toward the man's face too quickly to be clearly seen, but slowly enough to register as authentic. "National security protocol override." The senior guard, a veteran of 15 years with Brinks, hesitated momentarily. His training included protocols for police interactions, but something felt wrong. Before he could fully process his suspicions, Jorge stepped forward, adopting the authoritative stance he had learned during his brief police academy training. "This is a Level 3 security protocol," Jorge stated firmly, using terminology he knew from his training would sound authentic. "We have intelligence about a planned intercept. Compliance is mandatory under National Security Directive 1570. The reference to the actual Chilean national security framework, a detail Jorge had researched extensively, was the final push needed. The guard, believing he was witnessing some kind of high-level security operation, provided the 6-digit code required to bypass the primary security system. Jorge entered it into the van's security panel, causing the heavy rear doors to unlock with a pneumatic hiss. Inside were 8 reinforced cases containing the cash shipment. Each case weighed approximately 22 kilograms and was equipped with multiple security features, including GPS trackers, accelerometers to detect unusual movement patterns, and die-pack mechanisms designed to render the cash unusable if improperly accessed. The team worked with practiced efficiency, transferring the cases to their vehicles according to a predetermined distribution plan to minimize risk if any single vehicle was intercepted. Sophia directed this phase, having memorized the likely security features based on her previous banking experience. Felipe and Sophia quickly disabled the primary tracking devices on each case, using specialized signal jammers developed specifically for this purpose. The secondary trackers hidden within the cash bundles themselves would be dealt with at the safe house using more sophisticated equipment. For minutes, Alvarez announced, checking the specialized military chronometer strapped to his wrist beneath his tactical gear. At 8:22 a.m., 5 minutes into the operation, the cases had been transferred and the team began their coordinated exit. Phase 2, initiate. Alvarez commanded through their encrypted communication system, maintain discipline. Normal speed, normal behavior. The escape plan represented Alvarez's most innovative thinking. Multi-layered strategy designed around the concept of dispersion rather than concentration. Instead of fleeing together as a conspicuous group, the team would split into 4 separate vehicles, each taking meticulously planned routes that avoided major checkpoints and maximized the use of Santiago's notoriously congested morning traffic as cover. Alvarez had instructed during their final rehearsal, speed attracts attention. Blend, don't flee. Miguel and Jorge departed first in the utility vehicle, driving at a casual pace through the employee exit on the northern perimeter. Their route had been specifically chosen to take them past active work zones where similar vehicles would be common. As they approached the checkpoint, Miguel adjusted his posture to appear relaxed and routine. Finishing up that repair? The guard asked, recognizing them from their entry just 25 minutes earlier. All set, Miguel replied with practiced casualness. Supervisor's coming by later to check it, but we got it working for now. The guard nodded and waved them through without a second glance. This casualness was by design their maintenance. Its disguises and behavior patterns had been specifically crafted to be forgettable. Once clear of the airport, Miguel and Jorge followed a predetermined route that took them through commercial districts where loading vehicles were common. At a pre-selected location, a self-storage facility in the Quilicura district, they abandoned the utility vehicle in a rental unit secured under a false identity 3 months earlier. There, they changed into ordinary civilian clothes, transferred their portion of the money into 2 nondescript duffel bags, and separated. Miguel departed in a previously positioned motorcycle, while Jorge left on foot to catch a public bus, blending with morning commuters. Their separate routes would eventually lead them to different secondary rendezvous points. The Cordero brothers and Felipe took the first SUV, which contained approximately $3.8 million of the stolen cash. Their exit strategy was more brazen. They drove directly through the main cargo gate with a forged dispatch manifest prepared by Sophia based on genuine documents she had studied during her research phase. Security transport, special clearance, Daniel explained to the checkpoint guard, presenting documentation that identified them as an approved cash-in-transit service. The document bore official-looking stamps and authorization codes that Carlos had provided from genuine manifests. The guard examined the papers briefly. The manifest included technical jargon and authorization codes that appeared legitimate, and the vehicle's professional. Appearance complete with a magnetic sign affixed to the door, identifying it as Secure Transport Services, reinforced the deception. Raised the barrier without further questions. Once beyond the airport perimeter, the brothers followed a circuitous route designed to identify any potential surveillance. They drove through 3 different shopping center parking garages, performing counter-surveillance maneuvers that would reveal any vehicles consistently behind them. At their designated point, an abandoned commercial building in the SHK, they transferred to 2 separate vehicles, Felipe and Eduardo to a delivery van, Daniel to a taxi with falsified commercial registration. The SUV was wiped clean of fingerprints and abandoned in a location where it would likely be stripped by local criminals. before authorities could process it for evidence. Sofia and Valentina departed in the second SUV, with a smaller portion of the cash, approximately $2.5 million. Their escape utilized the most unexpected route, directly through the public airport roads and onto Costanera Norte Expressway. Blending with regular rush-hour traffic, Sofia drove at precisely the speed limit while Valentina, now physically present and no longer monitoring remotely, scanned for any signs of pursuit, using a police scanner tuned to emergency frequencies. Their vehicle had been chosen specifically for its unexceptional appearance, 3-year-old Hyundai Tucson in silver. Statistically, one of the most common vehicles in Santiago. They followed the expressway for 17 kilometers before exiting into the upscale Las Condes district, where they entered a pre-booked parking spot in a shopping center garage. There, they transferred to a different vehicle, a Chevrolet sedan rented 2 weeks earlier under a false identity, and continued to their secondary location, an apartment in the Providencia district, secured with cash 3 months earlier. Alvarez and Carlos executed the most sophisticated escape, carrying the largest portion of the money, approximately $9 million. They drove their SUV not to the airport exits, but deeper into the airport complex, using Carlos's employee access card to pass through an internal security checkpoint leading to the airport's administrative section, delivering security audit materials. Alvarez explained to the confused security officer, presenting forged documentation that identified him as part of an external review team. The guard, seeing Carlos in his legitimate airport uniform, allowed them through. This maneuver placed them on the opposite side of the airport from where the alarm would eventually be raised, giving them additional escape time. They drove to a predetermined location in the long-term parking structure, where a white panel van awaited. Within 3 minutes, they transferred the cases to this unmarked vehicle and abandoned the SUV. The panel van, rented 2 weeks earlier under a corporate identity created specifically for this purpose, had been modified with a false compartment beneath the floor. The stolen cases were secured in this hidden space, concealed beneath ordinary delivery packages and furniture. At 8:29 a.m., Valentina's CCTV loop ended as programmed, returning the security system to live footage. By then, all teams were already in motion toward their separate destinations. The alarm wasn't raised until 8:32 a.m., 7 minutes after the thieves had departed. Cargo supervisor arrived for the scheduled transfer and discovered the restrained guards. His first reaction was confusion rather than alarm, believing he was witnessing some kind of security exercise. This crucial hesitation added precious minutes to the robbers' head start. Before a general alert was issued, by 8:45 a.m., airport security had established that no authorized police operation had been underway, and the first calls to actual law enforcement were made. By this time, all members of the robbery team had cleared the immediate airport vicinity and were implementing their secondary escape measures. Each team now began the second phase of their escape plan, a series of vehicle transfers designed to confuse pursuit. Each team had 3 planned vehicle changes, moving from their initial escape vehicles to different previously positioned cars at scattered locations throughout Santiago. Alvarez and Carlos, carrying the bulk of the money, drove their panel van to an abandoned grocery store in the Putahil district. The site had been selected for its multiple exits and minimal surrounding surveillance cameras. There, they transferred the cases to 2 separate vehicles of Alvarez, to a taxi with falsified registration, and Carlos to a delivery motorcycle. They separated, planning to reconvene at the primary safe house in La Pintana. The others followed similar protocols, changing vehicles at predetermined locations and discarding their tactical gear and communication devices. Each piece of equipment was disposed of separately, some in public trash receptacles, others in sewer drains, still others in construction dumpsters, ensuring no single collection of evidence could be traced to the entire team. By 9:30 a.m., a little over an hour after the heist, all 8 participants had changed vehicles at least twice and disposed of any identifiable equipment. Each now traveled separately toward the primary safe house using different routes and transportation methods, some by vehicle, others using public transportation to further confuse any potential surveillance. During this dispersal phase, a crucial safety measure was implemented: complete communication blackout. no team member contacted any other until reaching the safe house, eliminating the risk of electronic surveillance or communication interception. By 10:15 a.m., the team had reconvened at the safe house in La Pintana. The mood was electric with adrenaline, but Alvarez immediately imposed discipline. "Professional mode only," he commanded, cutting short any celebration. "We have work to do before we're clear." Sofia began the painstaking process of disabling the secondary tracking devices. Hidden within the cash bundle's tiny GPS beacons, approximately the size of a rice grain embedded within random stacks of notes, using specialized detection equipment, she methodically identified and neutralized each tracker. Meanwhile, Felipe prepared the specialized solution that would neutralize the die packs without damaging the currency. These security devices, designed to release permanent ink if improperly accessed, required careful handling. Felipe's military background had provided him with knowledge of similar systems, and he had developed a method to short-circuit the triggering mechanisms using a precise electrical pulse. 12 minutes, Alvarez announced once Sofia had disabled the last tracker. "That's how long before the first police response team figures out where those trackers went dark. We have 7 minutes to clear out." The team had prepared for this moment. The cases were emptied into duffel bags lined with signal-blocking material. The original cases were loaded into a separate vehicle to be abandoned as a decoy on the other side of the city, a deliberate false trail to draw investigative resources away from their actual location. By 11 a.m., the safe house was empty. With the team dispersed to 6 different secondary locations throughout Santiago and the surrounding areas, the money now confirmed to total approximately $17.4 million. Not the anticipated $10 million was divided according to their agreement, with each team member departing separately. Alvarez's final instruction to the team before they separated was clear. 6 months, no contact, no spending, no changes to your routine. Anyone who deviates puts us all at risk. With these words, the team disbanded, each member carrying their share of what had become the largest heist in Chilean history. 8:32 a.m. 7 minutes after the thieves had departed, when a cargo supervisor arrived for the scheduled transfer and discovered the restrained guards. By this time, the robbers were implementing the second phase of their escape plan, a series of vehicle transfers designed to confuse pursuit. Each team had 3 planned vehicle changes, moving from their initial escape vehicles to different previously positioned cars at scattered locations throughout Santiago. Alvarez and Carlos, carrying the bulk of the money, drove their panel van to an abandoned grocery store in the Putahul district. There, they transferred the cases to 2 separate vehicles, Alvarez to a taxi with falsified registration and Carlos to a delivery motorcycle. They separated, planning to reconvene at the primary safe house in La Pintana. The others followed similar protocols, changing vehicles at predetermined locations and discarding their tactical gear and communication devices. By 9:30 a.m., a little over an hour after the heist, all 8 participants had changed vehicles at least twice and disposed of any identifiable equipment. By 10:15 a.m., the team had reconvened at the safe house. The mood was electric with adrenaline, but Alvarez insisted on immediate action. Sofia began the painstaking process of disabling the secondary tracking devices hidden within the cash bundles, while Felipe prepared the specialized solution that would neutralize the die packs without damaging the currency. 12 minutes, Alvarez announced once Sofia had disabled the last tracker. "That's how long before the first police response team figures out where those trackers went dark. We have 7 minutes to clear out." The team had prepared for this moment. The cases were emptied into duffel bags lined with signal-blocking material. The original cases were loaded into a separate vehicle to be abandoned as a decoy on the other side of the city. By 11 a.m., the safe house was empty. With the team dispersed to 6 different secondary locations throughout Santiago and the surrounding areas, the money now confirmed to total approximately $17.4 million. Not the anticipated $10 million was divided according to their agreement, with each team member departing separately. Part 4. The Investigation. April 10, 2023 to 10:37 a.m., Detective Inspector Gabriela Soto arrived at Arturo Merino International Airport amid chaos. At 42, Soto was one of the DI investigation's most experienced robbery specialists. With a reputation for methodical investigation and an uncanny ability to reconstruct crime scenes, "This is unprecedented," the airport security chief told her, as they walked briskly toward the cargo area. They knew exactly what they were doing. They were in and out before anyone realized what was happening. Soto surveyed the scene with narrowed eyes. "Show me the security footage," she demanded. In the security office, the chief queued up the recordings. "That's the problem," he explained, pointing to the screen. 8 minutes of nothing. Just empty corridors. "Loop," Soto murmured. "Someone got into your system." She turned to her partner, Detective Manuel Ortega. "Get the IT forensics team here immediately. And I want all footage from every camera in a 1-kilometer radius for the last week." The investigation quickly uncovered the sophistication of the operation. The robbers had left almost no physical evidence, no fingerprints, no DNA, no shell casings. The few witnesses described professional efficiency, but could provide no identifying details due to the balaclavas and tactical gear. This wasn't opportunistic, Soto told her investigative team during their first briefing. This was planned for months, possibly longer. These people had inside knowledge. The first break came 3 days into the investigation, when forensic analysis of the CCTV system revealed the method of the hack. The intrusion had originated from a maintenance access point that should have been disabled, but remained active due to an oversight during a recent system upgrade. Whoever did this knew about the vulnerability, the IT forensic specialist explained. This isn't public knowledge. It had to be someone with access to the system. Soto ordered a comprehensive background check on all IT contractors who had worked on the airport's security systems in the past 2 years. The list contained 73 names, but one immediately caught her attention. Valentina Rojas. His contract had been terminated 6 months earlier due to budget cuts. Dig deeper into Rojas, Soto instructed her team. Full background, financial records, known associates. Meanwhile, the investigation of the forged credentials used to access the cargo area produced another lead. The high quality of the forgeries suggested professional equipment, and the PDI's database of known document forgers in Santiago yielded 3 potential suspects. One of them, Luis Navarro, had been arrested 2 weeks before the heist on an unrelated charge. During questioning, Navarro revealed that he had produced airport credentials for a client who had paid in cash. "I never met him directly," Navarro claimed. "He sent instructions through an encrypted app. Professional job, paid double my usual rate." While Navarro couldn't identify his client, he provided technical details about the credentials that helped the investigation. Specialized paper and holographic elements used in the forgeries were traced to a supplier in Argentina, creating an international dimension to the case. The investigation gained momentum when the abandoned SUV used in the heist was discovered in a shopping center parking lot in eastern Santiago. Forensic examination revealed minute traces of DNA on the steering wheel. Not enough for a definitive match, but sufficient to narrow down potential suspects when combined with other evidence. By the end of the first week, Soto's team had compiled a profile of the robbers. A crew of 6 to 8 individuals with specialized skills, including military or police training, technical expertise in security systems, and inside knowledge of airport operations and armored vehicle protocols. The tracking devices disabled by the robbers provided another crucial lead. When analyzed, they showed that they had all gone offline within the same 3-block radius in La Pintana. A canvass of the area yielded a witness who reported unusual activity at a seemingly abandoned house in the days leading up to the heist. Multiple people coming and going at odd hours, the elderly neighbor told detectives. They always arrived in different vehicles. Very quiet, very careful. When police raided the house, it had been thoroughly cleaned. But crime scene technicians discovered microscopic traces of the same dye used in the security packs, confirming it had been used as a safe house. More importantly, they found a discarded receipt from a hardware store in the plumbing beneath the kitchen sink. The receipt led investigators to security camera footage from the store, which captured a clear image of Eduardo Cordero purchasing supplies 3 days before the heist. Eduardo, a known criminal with prior convictions for armed robbery, immediately became the investigation's primary focus. The unraveling, May 2023, the identification of Eduardo Cordero accelerated the investigation dramatically. Surveillance was established on his known associates, including his brother Daniel. Within days, PDI officers observed Daniel meeting with a man later identified as Jorge Mendez at a cafe in downtown Santiago. Mendez, the police academy dropout, had made a critical error. Flush with cash from the heist, He had purchased a new Audi sedan, conspicuous acquisition for someone with no legitimate source of income. Financial investigators discovered he had paid for the vehicle with a bank draft for exactly 70 million Chilean pesos, raising immediate red flags. By mid-May, Soto's team had identified 4 of the 8 suspects, the Cordero brothers, Mendez and Valentina Rojas, whose expertise matched the CCTV manipulation. Arrest warrants were issued, but the suspects had vanished. "They've gone to ground," Soto told her superiors during a high-pressure briefing. "Probably left the country." International alerts were issued through Interpol. Cooperation was established with police forces in neighboring Argentina, Peru, and Bolivia. Border security was enhanced, but the investigators suspected the crew had already fled using false documentation. The break they needed came from an unexpected source. Carlos Reyes, the inside man, had failed to follow Alvarez's strict protocols regarding spending. Instead of waiting 6 months before making any significant purchases, Reyes had bought a beachfront property in Vina del Mar through a shell company just 3 weeks after the heist. The real estate transaction triggered an alert in the Financial Intelligence Unit, which had been monitoring large purchases following the robbery. When investigators examined the property, they discovered it had been paid for in Cassia Rarity for such a significant purchase. Surveillance was established, and on June 2, 2023, Carlos Reyes was observed entering the property. Officers moved in and arrested him without incident. During the raid, they recovered approximately $1.2 million in cash hidden in a concealed safe. Under interrogation, Reyes initially maintained his innocence, but as evidence mounted, he began to consider cooperation in exchange for leniency. The turning point came when investigators revealed they had identified his former workplace connection to the airport and had witnessed testimony placing him in La Pintana in the days before the heist. Facing the prospect of a lengthy prison sentence, Reyes agreed to cooperate. He identified all members of the crew and provided crucial details about the planning and execution of the robbery. It was Alvarez's plan from the beginning, Reyes revealed during a recorded interview. He'd been working on it for nearly a year, said it would be his masterpiece. With Reyes's testimony, the investigation gained renewed momentum. Chilean authorities coordinated with international partners, focusing their search on countries with limited extradition agreements with Chile. By August 2023, the Cordero brothers were located and arrested in Paraguay, where they had been living under false identities. Their capture yielded another $2.3 million in recovered funds. Valentina Rojas was apprehended in September while attempting to board a flight to Spain from Colombia using forged documents. Her technical expertise had made her more cautious than her accomplices. But a facial recognition system at El Dorado International Airport flagged her disguise. Filipo Ortiz, the weapons specialist, was arrested in October after a routine traffic stop in Argentina revealed his false identification. He had been living quietly in a Buenos Aires suburb, having spent very little of his share of the money. Sofia Vargas managed to reach Panama before being identified at a high-end shopping district by an off-duty Chilean businessman who recognized her from news reports. Panamanian authorities detained her and found approximately $1.4 million in a safe deposit box registered under an alias. Miguel Fuentes, the driver, made it the furthest, establishing a new identity in Brazil and investing his share in a small coastal hotel. He might have remained undetected had he not reached out to family in Chile using an inadequately secured communication channel that had been under surveillance. By December 2023, 7 of the 8 robbers had been apprehended, and approximately $9.8 million of the stolen cash had been recovered. Only Rodrigo Alvarez, the mastermind, remained at large. Epilogue. Nearly 2 years have passed since the heist, and Alvarez remains a ghost, his whereabouts unknown. The 7 captured members of the crew are serving sentences ranging from 8 to 15 years. Their testimony has provided a comprehensive understanding of the heist's planning and execution. But none can or will reveal where Alvarez might have fled with his share of the money. Estimated at $3.2 million. International police agencies have reported possible sightings in locations as diverse as Thailand, Morocco, and Ecuador, but none have been confirmed. Financial intelligence suggests Alvarez may have converted much of his share to cryptocurrency, making it virtually impossible to track. The case remains technically open, with Interpol red notices active in 194 countries. The Santiago airport heist has been studied by security agencies worldwide, leading to substantial revisions in cash transport protocols and airport security measures. The hunt and investigation continue, with some details remaining confidential due to ongoing police work. Subscribe to this channel for this and more captivating stories.